So my name is Tanina Ross-Stain, and I teach here at the Law Center, and I want to start by introducing our dean, Bill Traynor.
Well, thanks very much, Tanina. And that's right. It's such a pleasure to be able to welcome everybody here to the Iron Tech competition. This is it's our 5th year. It's our 7th time that we've held it. And this is really such a source of great pride to us at the law school. We are very focused at Georgetown about how we prepare students for a transformed world of practice. You know, we're very, very focused on law and technology, and this is really one of our showcase events. So I want to welcome you all here, and I particularly want to acknowledge our judges. So we have first Dean Garfield, who's the president of the Information Technology Industry Council, which represents the technology industry globally. And then our colleague Paul Ohm, who joined us this year and specializes in issues at the intersection of technology and law. And then Jim Sandman, who's the president of Legal Services Corporation, the federal funder of direct legal services for people of limited income across the country, and really somebody who is a leader in access to justice. And has done extraordinary work and has had such a profound impact. So today's event reflects the extraordinary talents and efforts of our students who in a single semester build working apps that will serve the needs of people without access to the legal system. It's remarkable. I've always enjoyed seeing what the apps are, and I'm really looking forward to today. And this is, you know, as I said, it's a core course in our expanding curriculum at the Law Center that teaches students the technology skills that are increasingly important to the practice of law in the 21st century. And again, it also reflects a core commitment of the Law Center that's reflected in both our scholarship and our teaching, our commitment to access to justice. And when the apps are released, they will have a significant impact in closing the justice gap, serving thousands of others. So, you know, I was just talking to Mark Fleischaker about the work, you know, the Lo Bono law firm that he's really done so much to create and the way in which they use our apps. So it's great to be here. It's great to welcome you. And let me turn matters over to Tanina.
So I have to thank Bill again because he's been incredibly supportive of this from the first time I showed up and said, hey, I want to build an apps building class. And he and other people thought, but you don't know anything about software. So thank you, Bill, for being so supportive of this class and of this program. Bill mentioned that this is our 7th iteration, 5th year, and it's been quite a wonderful ride. It's great to see so many of our colleagues, friends, and students in the audience, and I know that a number of people are watching us online, so hello to everyone who's watching this stream. The competition is the culmination of a class that Mark O'Brien and Kevin Mulcahy, I left my glasses somewhere, but Kevin, I know you're here. Yes, he's waving at me. The three of us teach here at the Law Center, and the class, in the class, students are in teams and they collaborate with nonprofit, public interest organizations, direct legal service providers to build apps that increase access to justice. And during the class, we do our best also to bring in people to expose our students to the systemic problems around access to justice and to start thinking about systemic solutions. Some other thank yous, which are to Neota Logic, which has been with us from the very beginning, giving us the software under an education license, and to Pro Bono Net, which has been collaborating with us very closely, Mark O'Brien and I teaching together with Kevin and finding apps for us and finding, really putting together curriculum that gets students exposed to these issues. So thank you, Neota Logic, thank you, Pro Bono Net.
Thanks very much, Tanina. Very excited about this class, mainly because the students really, they dress up well. I'm very surprised. I don't want anyone to be under the impression that Georgetown Law students look like this every week, but they look very presentable today. I really enjoy teaching this class, both because of the interaction with the students, the tremendous work with Tanina and the Neota Logic team, but also because of the opportunity that this class presents to bring public interest legal organizations that are really grappling with how to modernize their practices and how to think about opening themselves up to make their know-how and their expertise more available to the public. The opportunity that this class gives to those organizations to really test out their ideas. If this class has gotten better over the 5 years that it's been in existence, it isn't just because the students are getting better, but it's also because the organizations, and there are 8 of them, I'm sure they'll be introduced with each of the apps, have really come with ambitions and real world problems that they're trying to solve. And I want to thank all of them for the engaging with the students over the semester. I think it's been a tremendous opportunity that the students have provided for those organizations, but really without their hard work and their ideas and their ambitions, there wouldn't really be much more than software. So thanks very much to everyone.
We have 8 spectacular apps, 8 wonderful teams who really achieved something by building working apps in the course of 1 semester, and you'll be hearing more about them. Especially I think that what's exciting about not just the competition, but the fact that these apps are going to go out into the world and really make a difference in the access to justice space. The rules for the competition are in your program. Let me just grab one real quickly. Each team gets 7 minutes to present and gets questioned by the judges for 4 minutes. There's going to be, so there are 8 apps, there's going to be a break after the first 3 presentations, 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and do another 3, and then there'll be another break. The evaluation, the criteria are in the program, and if you look at the back of your program, you will also find a score sheet. So if you want to follow along and score for yourselves, please do so. We have Twitter handle here. So don't hesitate to take pictures, tweet, and send information out into the world in the Twitter sphere. When the presentations are over and the judges are deliberating, we're going to open a social media poll, and we give a social media prize, so don't hesitate to vote for your favorite app. And with that, I think I've covered the bases, so I'm going to call up the first team. And that's the app, the Wisconsin Appellate Form and Brief Assistant, and it's Celia Belmonte, Elizabeth Woods, and Rita Hazlitt. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the app, the Wisconsin Appellate Form and Brief Assistant. We are Celia Belmont, Elizabeth Woods, and Rita Hazlitt. We worked with Colleen Ball of the Wisconsin Public Defender and Jeff Brown of the Wisconsin State Bar.
At the beginning of the semester, we were presented with a problem, one that we were determined our app would be able to resolve. The appellate section of the Wisconsin State Bar has a pro bono program for indigent litigants involved in a civil appeal. However, many users who would benefit from this program have their cases dropped before the Court of Appeals can even appoint a lawyer because of errors in the forms that are required for an appeal. This includes the notice of appeal, the waiver of fees and costs, the waiver of transcript fees and costs, and the statement on transcript. Even if all of the forms are filed and filled correctly, then the appellant is tasked with writing their own appellant brief unless they have obtained counsel either through this program or other means, a task which is daunting for practicing attorneys and almost impossible for most pro se litigants.
So how did we tackle this problem? How can we provide the user with a resource that not only helps them populate and file these forms correctly, but also later on in the process will help them create their own appellate brief? We did this by creating not 1, but 2 apps, and it is in 2 parts. At the beginning of the user's appeal, they refer to the form assistant, which helps them populate and file the correct forms for an appeal. And part 2 is the brief assistant, which gives them the resources to build their own appellate brief.
So with the form assistant, a confusing form like this and another confusing form like this with questions like you see in the red, this is not an appeal to be given preference pursuant to statute, which pro se litigants don't really even know what they're being asked. They don't know how to answer this question or even where to turn to find the right answer. Transforms, this is the brief assistant, into plain language questions. So as you'll see up at the top, what is the first and last name of the appellant? And the word appellant is in blue and has an underline under it. And a pop-up appears which explains to the pro se litigant exactly what an appellant is so that they know how to answer this question correctly. Then, after they're done with the form assistant, an email is sent directly to their account. And in the email, there are all 4 required forms that are populated by the app, not by the user. And it's sent right to their account. So there's no more hassle, there's no more confusion, and there's no more mistakes.
Then in the app brief assistant, which the user is directed to use several months after the form assistant when they're writing their brief, you can see this is a brief before the brief assistant, and it's not formatted correctly, and it's missing key factual and legal components. And we turned that into, this is the brief generated by the app, and it's formatted correctly by the brief assistant template, and the user has also been directed on what to include and advised on why they are including it. At the end of using the app brief assistant, it sends them an email, and as you can see here, they can receive and view that email on their iPhone or other smartphone.
So in addition to helping the user both fill out the forms and create a brief, there are a number of additional unique features of both of our apps. So first, both apps, once the user has finished using the apps, they are directed to not only important next steps that they must follow before filing either their forms or their brief with the court, but they are also alerted to important date deadlines that they must adhere to. Next, this is specifically for the brief component. We have provided a sample brief to any user of the app, and most of these pro se litigants have probably never seen a brief before in their life. So it provides this brief, which shows them each of the kind of important components of a brief. And there's a link next to each section that says, "What's this?" And so it's a very user-friendly way for the user to click the "What's this?" And as you can see up here, next to issues presented, you click "What's this?" and it explains not only what issues presented means and what should go in the section, but it also links to the specific Wisconsin statute that requires this section. And third, we also, throughout both apps, both the form and brief assistant, provide not only definitions for confusing legal jargon, but we also provide guidance for the questions, especially for those questions where they're asking for information that the user may not be familiar with or may not be able to find easily. So here it says, "What was the name of the judge who heard your case below?" And if you click guidance, it instructs the user on where to find that in their final order. And finally, both of our apps link users to resources that will help them beyond when they are finished with the app. So both apps link to the Appellate Help Desk of Wisconsin, which can help them answer any sort of questions or concerns they may have once they're finished using the app. And the brief component specifically links to Wisconsin Legal Advice and the Wisconsin Law Library, which for the brief component will help them to locate and utilize case law to make their briefs more persuasive for the court.
So the app will have an immediate impact on the lives of countless pro se litigants in Wisconsin by reducing stress, helping these pro se litigants keep their appeals alive, by reducing the number of dismissals, and most importantly, for the first time ever, giving them a personal assistant at the palm of their hands.
Thank you, and we will now take questions from the judges.
I'll start. I had the pleasure of looking at all of the apps last night. They're very impressive. It strikes me that maybe yours was perhaps the most ambitious. I mean, here you have to write a brief, and you have to deal with relatively sophisticated people who have been through litigation at the trial level. Do you agree with that assessment, and did that raise particular challenges that you had to solve?
Yes, we definitely agree. When we first started out, we actually were very ambitious with our content experts, and we had planned to do a criminal component that would help public defenders. But we quickly realized that in order for this to make a real impact, we needed to focus very narrowly. So that's why we're only focused on pro se litigants at this point. So we decided to narrow our focus just to the pro se litigants and just to the civil realm. And I think we hope that we did a pretty good job of streamlining that.
How did you come to the decision to streamline? Did you interview potential appellants?
So we spoke directly with Colleen Ball and Jeff Brown, who told us that the quickest and most immediate impact would be with these civil pro se litigants, because what they see time and time again is that they're not even getting to the brief writing phase. They don't fill out these forms. They don't know when to file them, timing, deadlines. that sort. So if we can help them even fill one of the 4 forms correctly, it's helping people in a tremendous way. So we thought, what could we do in this 4-month semester that could make an immediate impact instead of, biting off more than we could chew and, doing the best that we could with this specific civil pro se litigant.
Thank you for the remarkably clear explanation of the problem. I have a question about the availability of pro bono lawyers to help people at the brief writing stage. If you could just get people over those initial hurdles in perfecting their appeal, from what I read of the problem statement, there are pro bono lawyers available for appointment in Wisconsin. Do you have any sense of what the availability is of that resource, pro bono assistance, to help them write their brief if they can complete the 4 forms properly?
Yes, so the Court of Appeals and the appellate section of the Wisconsin State Bar does have a pro se litigant program, but for several reasons, someone might not qualify through that program, or they might not be able to be fully helped by that program. And so we do link them through the app both to that program and to the appellate help desk, which are resources that Wisconsin has in place. But part of the issue is also that being able to do this online and being able to do this for yourself if you don't have a lawyer can be very helpful. So yes, lawyers are available, but not in every case.
I was just curious because of the origin of this suggestion coming from the appellate practice section of the Washington State Bar. It sounds as if there are lawyers there who are ready and able to help, but they never get matched up with the client because the client doesn't perfect the appeal right.
Exactly. Actually, Jeff Brown, who we worked close with of the Wisconsin State Bar, he created a legal resource that is an interactive tool where the user, and we have a link to it in the app, they can contact these pro bono lawyers who help them along the way, and that can be email or setting up a phone conversation. But it is difficult, and I think that's just the virtue of the process, and that's why we're just trying to help this really daunting task. Any sort of help along the way, even explaining certain things, you should put these facts in the statement of the case instead of the slide we had of the brief before. That's an actual brief that we got from our subject matter experts that was, frustrating to the judge who received it. So just streamlining that or giving them any semblance of guidance and direction is our aim here.
You're right, too, that the main problem that our subject matter experts presented us with was that the forms are often filled out incorrectly, which prevents them from even getting to the stage where they would get help. So our primary focus was definitely on getting the forms assistant done, and then we expanded it to include the brief so that we could help the civil litigant all the way through the appeals process.
Thank you very much. Are you guys going to score along the way?
Yeah.
This is on. Our next team is Chart Your Course, the divorce source. It's Angela Kim, Althea Orfanidis, and Apekshka Vora. Come on up.
Marriage is a beautiful joy felt deep in the hearts of many. It's a value, it's an experience, it's a journey. But for some, marriage has become a source of confinement and fear, a longing for individuality and freedom, and a blockade to a happier, better, and healthier life. So with intentions not to undermine the importance of marriage, but to help those struggling begin life anew, we present to you the Divorce Resource.
My name is Apekshka Vora, and this is Alethea Orfandinis and Angela Kim. And we bring to you the Divorce Resource, which is designed to provide unrepresented litigants going through the divorce process with more information. We designed the app specifically for Legal Hand, which is an organization based out of New York. The primary users of our application are actually the volunteers who work at Legal Hand. They are typically community members who are retired and who were not lawyers by trade. So part of our design process was really focusing on the usability and user-friendliness of the application, as well as plain English. The volunteers spend their time going through each step of their process with the visitors. So the secondary users of our application are the visitors that come to Legal Hand.
So our goal is to first identify the legal problem, understand the user, and finally inform the user about the next steps.
The course through the divorce resource begins here with a statement of Legal Hand's mission and an overview of sources provided. But before we begin, we provide a short disclaimer so that the volunteer adequately informs the visitor that what they're about to receive is legal information and not legal advice. Next, the volunteer selects between 3 pathways: alimony, child custody, and support, and determines which of the 3 is most applicable to the visitor's situation. For example, if they don't have children, then you can skip right past the second 2 and go to alimony. We will now go through each of the 3 pathways.
So the first stop is child custody. While filing for divorce, you want to know if you have children, how likely you're going to get custody of your children. And so you want to look at all the different factors. So first we identify the user. Are you a parent? Are you a sibling? Are you a grandparent? Or someone else? And then we try to understand the user. Here we define what we're measuring. A primary caretaker is a legal term that we put in simple English. And then we've added a visual aid that will help the user understand what the numbers mean that they're inputting. And finally, we start a conversation. And after a conversation about maybe 15 or 16 questions, we generate a report that first explains what our system does. Our system compiles all the information that they've inputted, averages out all the numbers, and then produces a weighted score. And in a slightly adjusted visual aid, we explain to them what the number means. And finally, what to do with this information. We provide information about the local courts, and then provide them a custody application form so that they can file on their own.
The next possible path for the visitor is through child support. So this section of the application can determine whether or not the visitor is eligible to receive child support, and if they are eligible, can actually calculate how much money they might be able to get. So just focusing on the estimation portion of the child support section, you can see that it's entirely based on the user's inputs. So first, the app will ask the visitor questions related to his or her financial situation, such as questions related to their income and how much they might pay in certain kinds of taxes. Next, the app will ask the same series of questions, but this time related to the other parent's finances. And then the report shows the calculation that the app came to and shows the visitor how much money they were actually they might be able to receive in child support. 2 cool features about this is that one, the report is actually downloadable in 2 formats, Word and PDF, so that the volunteer can download it, print it, and give it to the visitor to take home so that they can be more equipped when they go to court. And second, we provide additional resources at the bottom so that the visitor can go find more tailored guidance should they need to.
The third pathway is alimony, which applies in 2 situations. One, during the divorce process, because perhaps the other spouse is withholding access to funds, and 2, after the divorce is over. One notable design of this section is the use of follow-up questions, which helps prevent wasting the visitor's time on questions that necessarily don't apply to their situation. So, for example, to get to these questions, they will only appear if you select the first option to question number 1. Follow-ups also keep the conversation moving, the screen uncluttered, and the experience streamlined. Alimony involves an eligibility determination as well as a dollar estimation, but unlike the child support section, the determination depends on the type of alimony selected. So if you want temporary maintenance, the process compares the income of both parties, and so the app will determine such via mathematical formulation, whereas final maintenance involves a weighing of factors very similar to the way that you saw in custody. Final feature is a direct link to the New York Court's alimony calculator, which takes something that is very useful, but otherwise generally unknown or very difficult to find, and puts it right at the visitor's fingertips. So all you do is you enter in both incomes of the parties, and automatically you get a reward breakdown based on yearly, monthly, and even weekly payments.
So in the United States, about 70 to 80% of individuals are self-litigated in family courts. We hope that this app will assist them so that they're more comfortable and confident so that we can narrow the gap in the access to justice. Thank you.
We will now take your questions.
I thought, sorry. I thought you did a really good job with the design elements of the site. I visited all of them before coming over here today. How did you think about the audience you were tailoring the site to? When in your presentation you talked about legal hand, but it also seemed as if it would be equally applicable to someone coming to it without legal assistance.
Yeah, so we actually spoke to some of the volunteers that work at Legal Hand, and we really talked to them about what they wanted out of the application. And in talking to them, it was pretty clear that they needed something that was really user-friendly, not just for them, but so that they could really quickly and easily explain things to the visitors that come in, because a lot of these, issues are really legally complex, and so they have a hard time just explaining and translating the legalese to plain English for them. So we really wanted to focus on that so that it would make the whole process more efficient.
Thank you for the great presentation. I really enjoyed that. Can you say something about the next step? You just touched on this. So if this is used by the volunteer, who is the liaison to the client, the person who actually needs the help, what is it that the volunteer does at the end of this process? How is it in concrete terms that they use the information that's been generated through the app?
We were fortunate enough to speak with a bunch of volunteers at Legal Hand, and before this application, the process was really just providing the visitor with a series of links via Google searches. So this application has really helped instead of the link process. Now they're having reports and PDFs that they get to take home. They're having dollar amounts, and the next step might even be emails and follow-up appointments and things like that.
So like my co-judges, I really appreciate how clear you were about the users, because for every one of these apps, that was always something I was a little confused about. So here's my question. This is an awfully peppy app, right? At every phase, it's like, congratulations, you get alimony, congratulations. And I wonder if that was an intentional choice. I mean, it seems like divorce for some people is going to be an awfully somber occasion. And so I was wondering how much that factored into the decision to have the exclamation points and the feedback.
So I think that's a very interesting point. I think we wanted to include the fact that it is we want to understand that it is a very somber process, and it's a very serious thing too. Yeah. But we also want to make sure that we are there to help them, and we want to convey our attitude that we're enthusiastic about advocating for them, even though the process might be difficult.
Yeah. And also, part of the intro is that life might very well be positive at the other end.
That's right. I take that.
So though it may be difficult now.
We got the political balance at the beginning. It was very clear. I'm also curious how you thought about the personal nature of the questions you were asking and making that easier for people to navigate, because you jump right into the app and asking a lot of very personal questions, but you seem to do it in a sophisticated way, so I want to get your thinking.
Yeah, so we kind of felt comfortable using that format just because the volunteers are comfortable with using that format, and that's really how they sort of build a rapport with the visitor, and it's sort of all about that process, getting the visitor to trust them and understand that they're really there to help. And so asking those really personal questions, although obviously are really personal, I think it also helps to build a rapport and to sort of say, like, you can trust us with this information.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great, and a first, by the way, I think I've seen of a student team whose wardrobe actually matched their app. So you've raised the bar there. The next team is the credit corrector, and that's Anna Magestro, Sandy DeSavage, and Todd Yoder. Take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandy, this is Todd, and this is Anna, and we created the credit corrector for the National Association of Consumer Advocates. Credit is very important. It affects your ability to borrow money, open a bank account, or even find a job. Unfortunately, credit reports are littered with errors. 1 in 5 consumers has an error on at least one of their credit reports. If you do find that you have an error on your credit report, you have rights under a law called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You can dispute the error directly with the credit reporting agency, which then has to conduct a proper or a reasonable investigation and fix any inaccurate information. It then has to contact the consumer with the results of the investigation within 30 days. Unfortunately, the process of disputing a credit error can be very difficult and confusing. Many consumers don't know what to include in their letters or where and how to send them. Furthermore, even if they do properly dispute the error, the credit reporting agencies often fail to remove the error, and sometimes errors can actually be put back into a credit report. The reality is that credit reporting affects just about everyone, so our app can help almost anyone in the United States. We designed the credit corrector to assist users who are at various stages of the credit disputing process. The app has 4 purposes. First, it shows you how to get your free credit report. Second, it shows you how to spot errors on the credit report. Third, it creates a letter for you to dispute those errors. And finally, it helps you find a lawyer if the credit reporting agency doesn't successfully address the error. The credit corrector begins by informing the user of their rights under the FCRA to receive a free credit report from each of the big 3 major credit reporting agencies every year. And this pop-up here gives information about who the credit reporting agencies are, what they do, and what information they look at. So if the user has not actually obtained a copy of their credit report, then the credit corrector gives them information about how they can go about doing that and also what errors to look for. And so I'll pass it on to Todd.
So next we get to the heart of our credit corrector app, and that is a step-by-step process to create a dispute letter that consumers can send to credit reporting agencies to try and get their errors fixed. We spoke with prominent attorneys from all over the country who specialize in the credit report cases. And in doing so, we learned what information should be included in the letters and any information that a consumer should have about the process. So we were not only able to just get information from the consumers as they're answering questions, we can tell them exactly why we need to know this and what they should know going forward. Different agencies could possibly have different errors in each report. The credit corrector is able to allow our users to create letters for up to all 3 of, 1, 2, or all 3 of the major credit reporting agencies. The app is built with helpful features such as images like this one, so consumers can look at their credit report and know exactly where to find the information that needs to be inputted, such as here we have a pop-up with the file number that identifies a certain credit report. With the app, users are asked to select a specific category out of a long list of what their error falls into. This allows us to have a pretty useful and helpful feature where we track the data that our app actually gets of all the users that input different errors, so that the people we are working with, the National Association of Consumer Advocates, can then track all of that data and use it in the future to know exactly when the credit reporting agencies are messing up and what they're messing up so that they can help customers down the road. Then our app allows, or here is where we ask them to provide a detailed explanation of exactly the situation that is going on. We also inform them the more detail they can provide here, the better chances that agencies will actually pay attention to them and realize that they actually have a real legitimate problem. Our app also allows users to dispute not only multiple agencies, but also multiple errors in one letter. So if a user has 1, 2, or even 3 errors on different credit reports, they can do all of them in one go. So instead of having to sit down and write 3 letters on their own separately for each agency. In one 5-minute app, they can do all 3 errors in 3 different letters. Here we ask for any enclosures that might be included and also inform them of exactly what you should put with your dispute letter, such as an incorrect report or a copy of your ID. And finally, we ask for contact information so that the agencies after the dispute can get back to them with the results of investigation. But also, we have an option for an email to be entered, so any letters we create and instructions can be emailed directly to the users after they've finished.
So finally, the credit report letter is created. We provide step-by-step guidance where the users can follow through and teach them how to send the letter, where to send it, and what to include with the letter. These documents, as Todd said, will be either available to download or emailed directly to the user. And this is a copy of the letter that we just generated. It's customized, including information about the consumer, the credit reporting agency, the detailed errors were included in their report, the enclosures included, and then the copy that will be also sent to the furnisher of the information. So this is a close-up look at one of the errors that was generated by our report. The first sentence is the description of the error, type of error sentence that is generated automatically when the user picks the type of error that is contained in the report. The second 2 sentences contains information about the furnisher of the information, and then the third item is the detailed description that the user provided about the error. And finally, the resolution. And all of this information is really important. The more detail you give, the more likely your error is going to be resolved satisfactorily. So then we explain to the user what to expect from the dispute process. And then if the user does not hear back from the credit reporting agency within the 30-day timeline, they can come back to the app and see what to do. Because unfortunately, the reality is that most people do not get errors resolved from credit reporting agencies, or they're reinserted into the letter. So we then guide them on how to contact a lawyer. And at this stage, we have set them up for a very successful claim because they have a well-documented, properly disputed claim that against the credit reporting agency for any failures. And so they can go to this page and click the Find a Lawyer button, and they will be then directed to the National Association of Consumer Advocates website, which contains a database of lawyers that work on Fair Credit Reporting Act cases. We think we've developed here an app that's very easy to use for everyone and is super helpful, and it's available to be used by millions of users across the United States to correct credit errors. And we've even used our own app to correct and spot errors in our credit reports, and we hope you'll use it too. Thank you.
I mean, I worked at the Federal Trade Commission at a time when people were fraudulently advertising services for credit reporting. It seemed like if this is going out to end users, at some points you could have done a little user education, or maybe that was outside the scope of the mission. Like, here's how to avoid having bad credit in the future, be careful of fraud. Did that factor in the conversations? Is that something that was maybe outside the mission of the agency?
Yeah, with our National Association of Consumer Advocates, we kind of had a very focused job for this, not so much dumping all the information we possibly could on avoiding every potential error with your credit in the future. Really, we wanted, if somebody had a specific error, tell them exactly what the process was, and if that didn't work, set them up for future litigation if that's the end all. So we really just had a very specific scope and what information instead of dumping everything possible on them.
You may have said it at the beginning, but do you have a sense of the scope of the problem? How big of a problem you were solving for?
Yeah, I think it's a huge problem. The FCRA is really comprehensive and hard for a normal person to tackle. And I think if you look at your credit report, I pulled mine to work on this app, and I found errors in it. And I think it's not very intuitive that you have to dispute those errors with credit reporting agencies. And I think a lot of people would go directly to the furnisher of the information and try to dispute it with them, and that doesn't initiate any rights under the FCRA. So I think our job was to educate the users how to do this properly.
Yeah, I believe the statistic was about 20% of all credit reports have some sort of error in them, so it's actually a huge problem.
Right. We wanted to help them not only dispute the errors in their credit reports, but also to know, how to access their reports and just to keep a watchful eye. I think it's important to know what's in your credit report.
You'll be a beneficiary of a question I should have asked everyone, but neglected to, and now I'll ask you. How do you think about the marketing of the app and making sure that it is a resource that people actually find, given the scope of the problem?
Yeah, well, we were lucky to team up with an association that already has a very helpful website with a lot of information and a lot of tools and a lot of traffic that gets to them because national association that, you know, helps consumers in all types of different things. So it's just more adding on to what they've already built, which is very helpful to us. It's not so much having to find that market ourselves. It's just, you know, putting an extra feature on that website.
Great.
Thank you for the great presentation. Can you tell me more about how the content of the letter gets created? How much of the creation of the letter does the user need to do himself or herself, and how much is standard content where in effect they're just filling in blanks with responses to the questions that you pose?
Yeah, the major portion would be their explanation that we allow them to fill and complete with themselves. Other than that, it's a lot of standard sentences, but filled with information that they might not think to put in originally. So like the furnisher, so if Visa is the one who is saying you owe them money when you don't, a lot of people wouldn't know to put Visa in there or something of that nature. So we allowed that, by asking the right questions, we were able to make sure they get all of the information in, and then we put that into the formatted sentences that we already have.
Does the app allow them to submit the letter by email online, or do they have to print out and mail?
Actually, when you're disputing, it is much better to print out in mail, so that is what we tell them that they should do, and especially certified mail, so if down the road they have litigation, they have a copy of saying, hey, I sent it certified, TransUnion, you got it on this day. So even the lawyers we talked to said to have them print it out and mail it, so that's what we're instructing them to do.
Right, the reason for that is under the FCRA, the 30-day deadline for the credit reporting agency to investigate and get back to you doesn't start until they receive the letter. And so if you send it by certified mail, then you have an exact time when they should have gone back to you by.
Thank you.
Reminded me that I actually have to correct something on my credit report, so I'll be using the app. We're actually going to take a break now, so I'm looking at the clock. Please be back at, sorry, it's a short break, by 2 o'clock, and we're going to have 3 more presentations then.
Good, this is fun. Yeah, the presentations are extremely fun.
Yeah.
They're all really good.
Of course.
Yes, sure.
I've been in Washington for 6.5 years. We were in California before. So I worked in the motion picture industry, and then before that, music.
You worked with, you were at MPA, right?
Yeah.
You worked with John Malcolm?
Oh yeah, of course. I know John. He was my boss when I first.
So I was at the computer crime section at DOJ, and he was the deputy ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I saw several deputies come and go, and he struck me as one who really understood things.
Okay, folks, if we could get everyone to reconvene.
I think we're all computer crime people in DC.
I forgot to mention something very important in my introductory remarks, which is that we are having a reception while the judges are working to deliberate. We will be beginning to eat and drink, and they'll be joining us. And there will be alcohol served. So just, which I think the students in particular are going to appreciate. Okay. So our next team is IHEAL. What happened to my names? I grabbed the wrong program here. Oh, here we go. My apologies. IHEAL, which is Immigration Healthcare Eligibility Application Liaison, and it's Jennifer Yano, Arvind Mirayala, Taryn Smith, and Lauren Weifels. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arvind Miriala. This is Taryn Smith, Jennifer Yano, and Lauren Weeks. And together with the National Immigration Law Center, and in particular, Alvaro Huerta, whom I hope is watching us, we put together IHEAL. It's an interactive app that allows folks who are looking for information about their healthcare eligibility to more easily get that information and then find somebody who can help them figure out more details on their specific situation. As you might imagine, that is more easily said than done. immigration in this country and also healthcare in this country. Very difficult to find out. And you can find hundreds of these kinds of images online. It is like a maze. And it's very difficult because it leaves folks feeling confused. It leaves people who want information having a difficult time finding that information. So we wanted to attack that problem by first getting to who our users were. We had to focus on making the app a little bit smaller, in particular attacking what is largely one of the largest immigrant populations in the country, California. And so we knew that some of our folks would be ESL, that English would be a second language for them. And we also knew that a lot of them would be lacking in resources because they can't hire an immigration attorney. So the way we dealt with that, and of course our secondary users would be people like NILC and legal aid associations across the state. So the way we dealt with that was to make sure that we had three themes. We wanted to make sure that the app was user-friendly. We wanted to make it so that the people using it were able to walk out with a level of confidence in the clarity of the reporting we were giving them. And then finally, we wanted them to have a direction, to have someone to go to after they got the information. So we're going to talk about some of the things we did to get there. Jen?
Great. So given California's Latino population, we determined that creating a Spanish version of our application would heighten accessibility. In doing so, Kevin Mulcahy helped me throughout the process using the translation manager that allowed me to input the Spanish translations I had generated into the application. As you can see here, this is Bienvenido Alivio, which is the Spanish version of the welcome screen. This is the screen that will pop up for the user once they've selected that they want to proceed in Spanish. So our goal throughout was to take a complex legal issue, which is determining healthcare eligibility under the Affordable Care Act, and make it simple for the user by asking straightforward and very simple questions, such as, are you pregnant? Have you taken prenatal care? And those answers, combined with their answer to their income and their immigration status, would allow us to generate very detailed reports on, for example, CHIP coverage, Medi-Cal coverage based on the county the person lives in. And so that way, we wouldn't overwhelm the user with information that maybe did not even apply to them. So this is the Spanish version of our app for CHIP and prenatal care, for example, which we have a helpful link that they could get more information on, as well as usually the center that is closest to their county, which is cut off in this section, but is included there. One of the most unique features of our app is the green card feature. Under the help pop-up, the person can simply grab their green card and go directly to what is highlighted in red and answer the questions that are relevant for the information that we need to proceed. And so we took this feature and made it a 2-minute process in which the user wouldn't feel overwhelmed and discouraged pulling out their green card because they didn't even know where to find the information we were asking for.
So another feature of that we're particularly excited about is the Medicaid eligibility bit. So if you've never looked at the math involved in determining Medicaid eligibility, it can get really complicated. The math involved is different dependent on your age. It's different dependent on whether or not you're pregnant. It's different dependent on the exact number of people in your household. iHeal does that math for you. And if you're eligible, we'll tell you why exactly you are eligible so that you have that information with you going forward. In designing the app, it was really important for us to keep in mind that for immigrants, providing information comes with a very real fear of providing too much information about their family or themselves, especially when that information involves their immigration status, and especially when you're providing that information to somebody like a lawyer or a government entity. So it was really important to us that at the very beginning, it was clear from the very beginning that the information you're giving us, we're only going to use to help you, and we're not going to share it with absolutely anybody without your express permission. And we wanted to continue that reassurance throughout the entire app so that our users don't get discouraged or become wary along the way. And we do that by providing pop-ups with links that either said help or why we ask. And the help links tell our user exactly what information we would like from them, and the why we ask tell them how we're going to use that information.
And one of our biggest focuses was having very targeted information. So we wanted to be able to tell our users exactly what we needed them to do and where to go find this help. So one of the things that we asked was what county do they live closest to, so that we could easily identify the center that they were closest to and then give this exact information in the report for them. Another one of our biggest focuses was on clarity. So it was very important to us to, even if we were providing them with lots of details through their report, we wanted to upfront say, look, we actually have some likely help for you, and we wanted them to feel assured and confident in the process. So this was one of the things that we wanted to highlight most clearly in the report. We would then send the report and the transcript directly to their inbox, which we thought would streamline the process because it would allow them to print out the documents that they had and then take it to the help centers, which would streamline the process both for the user and for the agent at the help center that was assisting them. And this streamlining process is particularly important in the access to justice movement because through all of the changes in technology and the capabilities that technology affords, we really wanted to encourage our users and the centers that we would be coupling with to sort of change the language, both figuratively and literally, that we're using in terms of helping our users, because only through changing the language that we're using is this gap going to be able to be bridged. We'll now take your questions.
I thought you did a great job with the design feature of the site, both in the bilingual nature of it and also why we ask. In fact, that's a innovation that I think websites should have generally that I hadn't seen in other places. So great job there. How did you even begin to think about tackling the problem, given that you're dealing with both healthcare and immigration? How did you decide where to start?
We conducted a lot of research and spoke to our subject matter expert extensively about how to tackle this issue. We didn't want to overwhelm the user with that information, so we overwhelmed ourselves in that and made the most simple reports that we could with legal information, but without using the technical language that you find on most websites. That is what discourages the users when they are faced with this sort of option to input information and try to get some help. And then they're given a bunch of legal terms and just generic information that isn't targeted to them.
And people like Alvaro, who's our subject matter expert, were really helpful in this. They could point out places in the process that were particularly difficult to figure out. If you're a temporary resident, for example, there's a lot of arcane rules that even as attorneys we have trouble figuring out. So there's one quick question, but then after that you'll have to go see someone to help you out.
Right, and I think that was another reason why we wanted to limit it specifically to California in our first attempt for the rollout of this app, is that California first is a state where lots of immigrants are affected by the Affordable Care Act, but they also don't even recognize that they have some access to these healthcare eligibility. So in California, based on the way that the state structures their access to Medi-Cal and Medicaid and Medicare, it was a much easier state for us to actually have answers to be able to provide to our users.
So this isn't my real question, but you know, on Capitol Hill, coming up with clever acronyms is like a really valued skill. Does one of you take credit for that, or is that kind of a group effort?
It was a group effort.
So, but that is a related question because I haven't asked the other teams this. There are 4 of you. Were there challenges about sharing the workload, about coordinating, about different visions for the site, or did you guys work through this pretty easily?
We did. I think that some of us took more of a design-focused approach to it, and then others the subject matter. Yeah. And so that way we were able to tailor very much our work in each part rather than each person taking on the similar task and then not becoming thoroughly experienced in the subject matter or the design. And so we divided the work that way.
You've done a really great job of putting yourselves in the shoes of the people that you're trying to assist, having a user perspective on this. My question has to do with the next step. Yeah. So when the user goes through this, you mentioned help centers. What do you envision the user doing when they complete their use of the app?
So what we envision, and this is sort of we've sort of talked about this with our subject matter expert as sort of being a larger rollout, because what we need our users to do is to use the app, get comfortable with the app, and then go to these health centers. But it would actually be more streamlined and easier if we were able to couple with those help centers and then have the report directly emailed to the help center, so the help center would understand how much intake is going to be coming in the upcoming weeks or months. So one of the things that we have spoken with Alvaro is how to do, and the National Immigration Law Center, is how to do that coupling. So how to be in touch with those help centers and have them work with NILC to sort of make it more of a partnered experience rather than just the users using the app and then having to get to the center on their own. Like a lot of apps use, text message reminders or email reminders. So it would be great if we could be coupled with those help centers and have the help center really make sure that the user is coming in to get the help that they are eligible for.
I have a question about the county information. Does eligibility vary by county, or are you inquiring about county of residents simply to refer them to the nearest help center?
So both of those things are true. Some of the cities, the larger cities in particular, Los Angeles, have programs for folks who live within the city limits. We didn't build that out as much as we probably could have without having the knowledge as to
I
where
was
the
going to say,
limits are.
how in the world would you do? All right.
Initially, we played around with the idea of playing on zip codes. But it's not really a clear answer. And so what we wanted to do is get people as far along the process as we could. And then after that, if they see a help center, that help center can provide them with a little bit of the more specialized knowledge and advice that they'll need, direction that they'll need in the future.
Yeah, LA is particularly complicated, having lived there, because LA, for example, includes LA County and LA City. It becomes really complex. How easy would it be, and I know we're running over with you, but to transport or have this, what you've built, be interoperable in another state?
Yeah, so I think given the fact that the app is already translated, especially for Latino communities, we'd be getting a lot of users. And so just the law in general, for example, for CHIP and Medicaid coverage and things such as that, can be translated into other states. More specific programs like Medi-Cal and such would be specific to California. But our reports and a lot of the information we provide, we started off very generally thinking that we'd be able to access more states. So they do have that general information that they can obtain and use to apply to other states while using the app. So I think that what would be added is specific programs that are on a state or even county basis, like some programs in California.
Great.
Thank you very much. Our next team is Navigators Compass, Emma Elliott, Eric Fisher, and Chris Harlem.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emma Elliott. We've got Eric Fisher and Chris Harlem here, and we created the Navigators Compass app in conjunction with Pro Bono Net and Legal Services of NYC. So the purpose of this app is to assist unrepresented litigants in the New York City housing court system. So most of the defendants in housing court, which are typically tenants, they're pretty vulnerable usually, and they come to housing court unrepresented. Now, there's a great deal of resources that are available in the New York City housing courts, but it's kind of difficult to find your way. So what they've done is they've created this navigator program. They have housing court navigators who are volunteers. They're usually college-aged. And so what they do is they meet tenants when they come into court, and they help them issue spot their legal problem, find their way to where they need to go in court, and ultimately connect them with the resources that they need. Right now, the navigators are, at this moment, standing in the lobby of the courthouse using a 200-page plus manual to sort through to help these tenants address their issues. So as you can imagine, that can be kind of a challenge, especially when someone comes in, they need to know where to go right away, or they have a really complex legal question that might take some more time. So what we wanted to do was take this really unwieldy manual and condense it into the palm of someone's hand. So this is an app that's going to be used on a cell phone by the navigators, and they'll be able to easily click through it. So the goals of our app, we wanted to structure those interactions between the navigator, who's going to be the primary user of the app, and the tenant, to ask really quick and easy questions to figure out where the tenant needs to go for their legal problem. So some of the app is going to be a really in-depth legal questioning, and then some of it are really quick, where do I go for this kind of claim? I don't speak English, I need an interpreter. So, and you're going to see that as we go on. So those are the primary goals of the app, and so condensing all of that into a detailed and easy to read report for the tenant to receive via email was very important as well. So as you can imagine, we've got some challenges that come up when we think about this app and this program. We've got tenants that are coming in with a really wide range of issues and therefore questions for the navigators. Also, the navigators are volunteers. They're not lawyers. They can't even give legal advice. So they're limited as to what they can do, and they also have different degrees of experience doing that as well. So condensing all that into really workable reports was probably our biggest challenge, and so we decided to attack it with color-coded sticky notes. So this is Chris's coffee table, and this was a starting point for us really trying to organize all of the elements of this very comprehensive app that someone is going to initially see when they come into court and figure out, okay, this is their problem, these are all the options that they could come in with, and this is where they're going to go. So again, very kind of rough draft of what we did here, just spending lots of days with, some Thai food and mapping all this out. And it kind of worked into this flow chart. And so this is, of course, very premature. So the guys are going to tell you what this app looks like now that it's more completed.
Yeah, so as you can see, we designed this primarily for the iPhone. We wanted a friendly, clean interface because the navigators can be overwhelmed as well as the client who might be looking on. A few features. So we came up with the concept for this logo, took it to a professional designer who owed me a favor. We had a hidden house and compasses in there. We have navigator rules at the top. There are a few hard and fast rules that the navigator can't violate, such as talking to the judge. We wanted those to be quick reference. And finally, we went with New York's blue and orange. We wanted it to be really friendly and just something that, would put the client and the navigator at ease. So the organization of the app, we had 5 major buckets. The primary one is law and procedure. The idea there is that's going to be what kind of really looks at their legal problem, figures out where in the process they are. The other 4 are more for one-off questions. We're dealing with clients with a wide range of sophistication, a wide range of questions. We kind of wanted to be able to answer everything from the most basic to the most complex. And our app is really comprehensive. It can deal with any of these 4 problems, which is pretty much all of the problems that someone would come to housing court with, whether they're bringing a claim or they're having a claim brought against them. So looking at the law and procedure section, which is again kind of the centerpiece of our app, the first screen is very simple. Do you have a claim being brought against you? Are you bringing a claim against somebody? We then take you to a screen where there are 2 options. And we just wanted to point out some of our use of plain text. Non-payment here is your landlord claims you haven't paid rent. Compare that with once you flip through the 200-plus page manual, non-payment proceeding, a court case started by the landlord to collect unpaid rent and to evict the tenant if the tenant cannot pay the rent that is owed. We think we're doing a much better job of diagnosing the problem. And then finally, we pinpoint exactly where in the process they are, whether this question looks at whether they're there for their first time, they've been there before, perhaps they're looking to settle, they just need to go to their courtroom, or maybe they missed their court date. If it's not on this list, we also have an other menu. The idea here is that we pinpoint their exact next steps, whether it's filing an answer or simply just checking in.
So these are a couple of the other buckets. So one of the most common buckets that the navigator uses is the frequently asked questions. And so these are common one-off questions such as I have an answer, or I need to miss my court date, what do I do? Can I get my fee waived? And now as you can see, answer has, it's blue and underlined as you've seen before, it has a pop-up defining this term in plain language. Another common bucket is the legal help locator. Now I know Mr. Salmon has asked a number of times, what about getting the litigant in contact with a lawyer? Because these navigators are college volunteers and they can't provide legal advice. Well, this actually puts the tenant in touch with a lawyer based on what box they check, either one box or multiple boxes. It can also tell them of their legal rights as a tenant, as well as affordable housing, common social services that are needed. Another page is where to go. This is, again, a one-off question that sometimes people don't want to spend 10 minutes with a navigator. They just need to know where they need to go. Now, if they don't know the specific location, as indicated here, they can click Unsure. And this takes them to another page of logic that diagnoses their problem based on services. What are they looking for? Are they trying to answer a claim? Are they trying to deal with their scheduling? Maybe just a lawyer for the day. And each of these answers are linked to a specific location. Now, in terms of reports, we have two different reports that you can see here. The left side shows you can easily put in your email address. If you click here, and within seconds from your phone, you type in your email address, and immediately you have an email that tells you, with a PDF, an actual document of the report that you just were told and just received. That report also has links to information, including additional services and other websites. Now, on the right is a more comprehensive report that's color-coded, that has pop-ups that shows you what you must do. And wrapping up, we also include documents that allow for sample documents that are fill in the blanks, such as filing and answer, among others. So at this point, we'll take any questions, and thank you for your time.
So I will say that this answered a lot for me because I was using this on a desktop last night, and I kept saying, "Why are the buttons so big? Why, you know?"
Yeah, what would happen is some of them would be in the middle of the page too.
Yeah, no. So that's great, and it was a very nice presentation. I mean, the obvious question is, what did you leave out from the 200-page PDF? I mean, your quote suggests that maybe it was a little poorly written because that was horrible legalese you just put up there. But
yeah, I mean,
what's the next thing you would have added if you could have that didn't make it in?
I know one topic was an actual dictionary of legal terms, so common terms that we could add. Yeah. But just due to the comprehensiveness of including a dictionary in this app, we thought it would be a little excessive in terms of line 1 and line 2, up to however many terms that are included.
Yeah. Another thing we considered was an actual form identification page where if you showed up and you had no idea what was going on, we would kind of look at your form and figure out what was going on. The problem is that, it could be coming from different law firms. Not all the forms look the same. And, we just tried to diagnose it based on questions rather than the actual form because it just seemed too complicated.
And another reason that the manual is so long is because it has all the resources and all the court hours and all the locations for all 5 boroughs in one place. So what this app does is at the very beginning, it asks you, what borough are you in? And then everything you get from there is tailored to just what you need.
Including room numbers, hours, that sort of thing.
How did you go about finding out what navigators need most? And did you have an opportunity to test any of this with real-life navigators?
So unfortunately, we had somewhat of a redesign last week. Last week was going to be our testing week. But, we talked with the head of the Navigator program who really just stressed us. And it's kind of easy for us to put ourselves in their shoes because it's a few years ago. These are college-age students, maybe ones who want to go to law school who, padding that resume a little bit. Who are really just there volunteering, and they're kind of overwhelmed. When you're a 20-year-old kid trying to help, a 40-year-old who's getting evicted, it could be an overwhelming experience. So we just try to make it as clean, as friendly for them. And I think that's a pretty easy experience for us to, kind of put ourselves in those shoes because we've volunteered with organizations before.
I think you did a great job of that.
Thank you.
The subject matter experts, too, that we talked to were really intimately familiar with the program. So, for instance, one of the things there would be, law and procedure and frequently asked questions, and there'd just be, an interpreter button. And at first we were like, that's just one thing. Does that? And they were just like, we need that right up front. I mean, so that was something that initially we didn't know if that made sense, but they just... So things like that along the way, they were like, this is a big need, we want this front and center. So that was really helpful.
Building on both of those questions, the next iteration of this, if you were still working on it, what would you like to add to improve its usefulness?
Well, I know, as Emma mentioned, one thing is the use of this page. It would be, I think, really helpful if we could either interact with the courts or get some template of documents that they can compare to. Because frequently a litigant might say, look, I got served with this paper, what is it? What do I do? And so we had to take that logic and translate that into text. And so we tried to do that, and that's contained in the law and procedure. There's a page that says, hand your document over to the navigator, and the navigator is going to search for these type of terms to help you diagnose your problem. But if not, if that can't help you, go to this location and room to see a lawyer for the day that's there for free. But it would just take one step out of the whole procedure if we can say, compare your document to these 10, 15 documents, and you can identify the problem right then and there, so then we can help them in a more efficient and effective manner. That's a big focus of ours, is efficiency, so these navigators aren't overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So they can actually help the most people. Instead of spending 10 minutes with one person, they might be able to diagnose the problem faster to then actually help maybe 5 people in those 10 minutes.
And I think another thing is we had talked a little bit about populating the answer forms. The problem is that there's concerns that because these are college-age students without a law degree, that we'd be running into some legal, ethical issues. But hopefully if we could run it up the chain, you know, maybe make it a little more involved in populating those forms rather than just giving kind of the sample form, which is what we did to play it safe.
Our next app is New Beginnings, the Juvenile Record Sealing Advisor and Care Portal. It's Jason Dupree, Tarragon Apathy, and Gennady Nanini.
This is an all too common narrative in the juvenile justice system. Kyle, age 16, comes from a disadvantaged family. So he wants to get a job, but he can't because he was arrested 4 years ago. So that is why we created New Beginnings, to close the juvenile justice system's revolving doors and open new doors to the community.
So we made the first criminal-facing app that the Iron Tech practicum has seen. And at the end of the process, the youth can actually walk away with a physical motion to go seal the record that they can go file and instructions on how to file it.
Our report actually, we have 50 plus reports in here and 50 different scenarios that the youth may go through. So our experts at the Juvenile Justice Clinic here at the law school let us know the statute is actually very complex depending on the youth's contact with the police, what kind of contact they had, and the timing, the time frame of it. So there's over 1,000 different scenarios the youth could have. We have 50 separate reports and pass in this app, and then any others the juvenile clinic suggested we send them to a lawyer at PDS or the juvenile clinic, which we link in our reports. So who are our users? We have 2 sets of users that we target in this app. The first are juveniles with a criminal record. They're often very confused, they need a fresh start, and more than anything, they need connected to their community. Our second group of users are lawyers and other youth advocates. They're often new in the clinic here at the law school. They're very burdened with caseloads and classes, and they're very short on time. So therefore, we aim to solve a legal and a social problem here. Our first main goal was to simplify these complex record sealing statutes for the juveniles and provide education so they can be their best advocates. Our second major goal was to provide reports, motions that they can go seal with the court and start over, and filing instructions with where to go.
We also use a platform that's optimized for both mobile and stationary devices, and our final goal was to actually connect the youth with members of their community who could help solve their non-legal needs that might have initially gotten them into crime to begin with, so it combats recidivism later on. So our design process, we wanted to provide a platform that could have access for multiple kinds of users based on language, number of contacts, nature of police contacts, and age. We also wanted to simplify a really complex statute. As Gennady mentioned earlier, there's over 1,000 potential outcomes. A lot of the terms are terms of art, and it's difficult to understand if you're a novice. We also had stakeholder involvement for both apps, so we had focus groups to help us create a more user-friendly interface that actually makes sure to not overwhelm the user with information while still educating them along the way. And we also wanted to avoid common pitfalls, such as not understanding where exactly you can go find a motion to file or what the term actual innocence means.
As Tara mentioned, the app accommodates multiple groups of users that communicate very differently. So at the beginning of the app, the user will select their identity, such as juvenile versus attorney, or English or Spanish speaking. All of the text of the app has been translated into Spanish, including the questions and the reports. This way, we're able to reach a broad audience with the same logic of breaking down a complex statutory scheme.
So for example, you'll see a juvenile text and an adult text on the screen for the same question, depending on the path the user selected. So on the left, you'll see that the first response says, "You were never charged." That's the juvenile's text. It's pretty basic. They were never charged. But on the right side, that same response on the adult side will say "no papered," because that's the term used in the court system, and that's a term the juvenile attorneys will be familiar with, and they can more efficiently navigate the process. And here's an example of our English to Spanish that you'll see in the app as well.
So we also use helpful pop-ups along the way so we could educate the users, both juvenile and novice attorneys, without overwhelming them. So here we explain what exactly the term professional advocate means. And on this next pop-up, we present this to them at the beginning of the process. And this next pop-up shows an actual motion to go seal your record. And this allows the juvenile to understand what the end result should look like and make the final goal more tangible and accessible for them.
In addition to that, we want to make sure we educated the user. These are juveniles that are going in to seal their motion, to seal their records by themselves most likely. The majority of them do not have an advocate, and so we want to make sure that they're able to navigate through that system. So for example, when we tell them in their report, you can get your record sealed 2 years after a case was closed, we want to define for them, as you see in green, exactly what that term means in the courthouse. Additionally, at the beginning, when we tell them you can get your record sealed, we have a pop-up that defines what that means. It's not just something they heard from a cellmate or somebody in their community. They know that that means that nobody can see their past unless court ordered, and that they can do things like apply for school, seek employment, loans, etc. once their record is sealed.
We created 3 separate decision trees based on the number of contacts the youth had with law enforcement. Had we only created one path, this could misguide the user as far as eligibility or when the person needs to be referred to an attorney immediately for guidance. So this way, both new attorneys and the youth are able to navigate a complex statutory scheme.
And we also wanted to make sure that the youth completed the process and actually went down to the courthouse and filed their motion to seal. So to this end, we wanted to remove as many barriers, mental and physical, as we could. So we showed them a map of where the courthouse is with places to print nearby and specific directions on how to go file and what exactly to do when they get there.
So within the report that Tara just showed you, there's filing instructions. And within that, we worked with the experts a lot to figure out what it felt like and what it looked like for the juvenile to go there so that they wouldn't be scared or deterred not to actually go seal their record after they used our app. So our experts gave us all the cultural capital and tips that we should give our juveniles. So for example, we tell them to send a copy of their juvenile record with their motion so people like Kyle can have his motion sealed quickly and get a job sooner. We also give them a heads up to print 4 copies on the map of where we tell them they can print so they know that when they go there. And then we also not only tell them where to go and what to do, we also tell them who to talk to, i.e. the paper and attorney.
The final output of the app is a report. The report first states whether the youth is eligible or not to seal their records and gives an explanation of about over the 50 different scenarios that can affect eligibility. If the youth is eligible, the user will have the option of receiving either a blank motion customized for the specific statute the youth is eligible under that they can file with the court, or a pre-populated motion. Furthermore, the user will have the option of receiving the motion, report, and filing instructions in an email sent to them.
And we will demonstrate this at the end. Also in that report, we're going to have a link to our second app, which is actually on a different platform called Nation Builder. So we're working with our experts and Jason Tashea here in the audience to build that app. So we want to bridge our youth to extra legal needs so that they don't end up back in the system. So we have kids in our community that end up in the juvenile justice system and get a legal advocate. That's great. We've solved that problem with our first app. But we want to make sure in our second app that we connect them to volunteers in their community so that they end up back in their communities and not in jail.
So the way it's going to work is that the youth or their advocate on one end is going to enter their needs, and they're categorized in 3 different ways based on duration and nature. And on the other end, the community volunteers will go in and look at what the needs are, and they can sign up for whichever ones they want to meet. And on the back end, those 2 users will be matched, and we'll send out a notification to both of them. And as Genevieve mentioned earlier, it's on Nation Builder, which allows for multiple user access, which was the reason we wanted to utilize them as well.
Thank you for your time. Please feel free to ask any questions.
While you're asking questions, we'll have this in the background. It's just an example report.
I think this is really terrific. Have you thought about how you would market this, since one of your audiences is juveniles themselves? How would you inform them of the availability of something like this?
So we actually talked to Jason Tashea about that a lot because he had a similar app, and he gave us a lot of tips in terms of social media advertising. There's a Google mechanism that you can use to kind of make sure that it gets high up on the searches, and a variety of other ways. And so we're still working through that, but we're hoping that once a minimum threshold of people know about it, it'll kind of catch on more.
Yeah, so just to add off that, initially we're selling it out through the Juvenile Justice Clinic, I guess, and then other youth advocates will be giving it to their partners in their offices.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
So the tech nerd in me noticed that the 2 paths ask the same questions with different wording. I love that. And I also have to say it's really hard to pull off the type of presentation you just did, where you each take the mic, but it's one theme. So well done on that. So my one question is, at one point on the youth path, you asked this question: did you commit the crime? And I kind of stopped for a minute and I thought, Boy, talk about a sensitive question and a question that's kind of fraught. You didn't have the little why we ask disclaimer that you actually had in other parts of your app. So I just want to hear more thinking about why you had to ask the question and then what you thought about in the way you asked.
We discussed this at great lengths with the subject matter expert. The reason why we asked the question is because one of the 4 statutes under which a juvenile can seal their record is actual innocence. So if they did not commit the crime or if they have new evidence, there's a mechanism by which they can get their record sealed specifically for that. We went back and forth as far as what is the appropriate way to ask that question because there is a lot of concerns. And we felt like that would be the best language.
I'm curious, what if you had asked, were you innocent? I don't know why. Is that less loaded or is that harder legally?
Yeah, so the experts basically, we had just, yes, I committed it, no, I didn't, but of course every juvenile is going to say, no, I didn't commit it, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So they asked us to phrase it as, do you believe you can prove you're actually innocent? And so if they say that they didn't commit it or that they believe they can prove they're innocent, it goes down the same path in the logic tree.
Is this applicable in multiple states? I saw in the form it seemed to be DC-centric in the form.
It is DC-centered at the moment, yes. We're hoping maybe we can expand it later on, but because it's a DC-specific statute, it would require probably different logic trees, et cetera.
So I think we're going to take another break now. So I can't see, but let's assume that we're going to get together at 10 minutes of 3 o'clock. Folks, please take your seats. We have 2 more presentations left. And the next presentation is going to be the Ticket Fixer, Jeffrey Butterworth, Rachel Morris, and Stephanie Ritter. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. We're presenting the Ticket Fixer app. My name is Rachel Morris. This is Jeff Butterworth and Stephanie Ritter. So the problem that we're presenting is that in California, there's a huge problem with low-income individuals that are disproportionately affected by driver's license suspensions and ticket fees. This happens when someone gets issued a ticket and they're unable to pay that initial fine. This can end up leading to major problems for the individuals, like a ticket going from a $100 fine to essentially being an $815 fine when you add in state penalties, different fees, different assessments, and it can be completely overwhelming for someone who already can't afford that initial ticket. So our goal with this is to help these individuals out. California started to find a solution with their ticket amnesty program. This program allows individuals who have received tickets to apply for amnesty, where their ticket is either reduced, or it's reduced by a certain amount depending on their needs and their abilities, and it also allows them to reinstate their license if it's been revoked. So we were working with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a pro bono legal assistance program, and what they do is they work with individuals, and their goal is to advance and protect and promote legal rights of communities of color and low-income persons, immigrants, and refugees. So with this app, they want to be able to help these individuals with either pro bono attorneys or with non-attorneys to walk individuals through the process of getting ticket amnesty. So what it does is it goes through each step of the statute. The statute itself was pretty complicated, had a lot of legalese, and not clear for users. So instead, we break it up and walk them through that process and do a calculation of what they're eligible for. So the actual users of this will likely be attorneys, non-legal service providers, and then hopefully we'd like it to be eventually put on their website and available to be used without a service provider, just for someone who's been issued a ticket. And that was our goal in the language that we've used. So we'll now show you our app.
So the first page of the app just introduces the user to the app and provides them with the DMV form that's necessary to complete all of the questions. The second page is a disclaimer saying that the app isn't a replacement for legal service or other legal services. And this is important given the diverse group of users that's going to be using this app. So the first questions determine whether the user and the ticket are eligible for the program at all. And this took pages and pages of the statute, and we boiled it down to 4 questions. Whether you have outstanding debt, what made you earn the ticket, whether you owe victim restitution in the county that you received the ticket, or whether you have outstanding warrants. If you are eligible, this report is generated, which gives you various fees associated with the amnesty program, important dates that you have to know, and the option for payment plans. Once you're determined eligible, you have to find out what you're eligible for. So there's 3 different things you can receive. You can either get your driver's license reinstated, which allows people to return to work and ends the cycle of poverty, or you can get your ticket actually reduced monetarily, or you can get both.
So if you are eligible for the program, you go through a couple of questions to find out, like Jeff said, if you are eligible for just your driver's license being reinstated or whether you're eligible for an actual reduction in the price of the ticket. So these are some of the questions that we ask to figure out what that end result is. And these are all of the questions that would make a person eligible potentially for a reduction of the ticket. So if your income is 125% or less of the federal poverty guidelines, you receive any of the following public benefits, or if you're a resident of a homeless shelter or a treatment program, you can actually have the price of the ticket reduced. And in some cases, that can be a really, really substantial reduction for people. So you could potentially get up to an 80% reduction of the ticket. So that would be the most successful case. That's the maximum you can get the ticket reduced. And then after we sort of bring the user through all of these steps and end with this conclusion about the percentage reduction, we ask them if they'd like to provide contact information so that an attorney can follow up with them. And that's really important to us because we wanted people to have the option to follow up with an attorney afterwards while not putting any pressure on them to give us contact information because they've given us some sensitive information. In this way, if they provide the contact information, the attorney can reach out to them instead of the other way around. It takes a lot of the pressure off the user to do that. So if they do wish to give contact information, they can provide their name, phone number, email, and that way we can email them out the report. So this is just a sample of filled out contact information, and then this is the final product. So you'll see up top, there's both the final report in the Word and PDF format, so that way they can download it, they can print it, they can keep it for their records, and you'll see that there's also a warning not to leave the page before saving or downloading the report. And you'll see that all of the individual conclusions that they received as they went through the app are populated here in one place for them. And then again, you'll see the warning again down the bottom. We really wanted to make sure that they downloaded and saved the report before moving on. So in summary, our app is the Ticket Fixer. It deals with the California Ticket Amnesty Program, walks the users through the process, and determines the eligibility and result of that eligibility.
Tickets may not be the sexiest problem in law, but they have a huge impact on low-income people and can affect their ability to earn a livelihood, as you said. Can you tell me about the next steps? So this determines eligibility. Does the app tell people then what to do to get the ticket actually reduced?
Yeah, so in that final report, it actually discusses next steps that the person can take. So it talks about you can go to the court, you can file this this form to start your process of actually working with the court to go through the program. And then by taking the contact information, we're hoping that the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights will be able to actually reach out to people to follow up with them to make sure that they've sort of initiated that process and that they've stuck through it.
I wonder, building on that, there was a fair amount of reporting this summer around tickets as well as fees and fines that end up throwing people into poverty, essentially, in this cycle that you talked about. Is the Ticket Fixer potentially applicable there as well? Would it be pretty easy to build on what you've done here to address other fees and fines as well?
I think it's fairly limited to the California system right now because of the amnesty program they've developed. I think it's a good program for other states to consider adding on and following the lead of. I think it also has potential, though, for people who do have tickets to understand how they can start going about resolving the issues. I presume other states might have similar ways to do this without maybe being as drastic in the steps California's taken.
And one thing that we could have talked to every team about was the difficulty of not giving legal advice, right? And you all had disclaimers. I was struck, however, in your concluding screens how absolute you were, right? Congratulations, you get an 80% reduction. Like, was there a discussion about should we hedge a little bit? Should we throw an adverb in there? Because I'm sure there's a lot of complexity in the law, right? I'm just not used to lawyers telling me, congratulations, here's a clear answer, right?
We had a lot of discussion about this,
Yeah.
of how in-depth we could go with what it was. So we tried to hedge for the most part and say, you are likely eligible.
Right. But I think in the final screen, it just says you get an 80% reduction, right?
Yeah, so I think it was, I don't know.
Well, one of the things that we ended up deciding was that we didn't want the users to sort of go through this whole process and then feel like at the end they really hadn't gotten anywhere.
Yeah.
So that we wanted to sort of present the conclusion in more concrete terms, so that they didn't feel like it was a waste of their time or that they had sort of just gone through this process to no end.
Also, the statute itself was pretty clear about this.
Yeah,
It's either
okay.
50 or 80, and if the answers were correct as far as the user input, then it is 80%.
I had a legal question too. So reckless driving and DUI, I understand why those don't get dismissed. Parking tickets? Why are parking? Do you have any idea why they don't let you get amnesty on parking tickets? I lived in California a long time. This might be a personal question, but that's clearly not encompassed.
Cash in the bank is why.
I'm not from California, but I've heard a lot about the not San Francisco tickets, the LA tickets, and that they're pretty egregious. But I think it's the idea that someone has intentionally done that. You've done an act. This is my conjecture. I have no idea actually why California chose to do that. We could check the legal history for you though and get back to you.
Very kind.
Great.
And our last team is the Veterans Benefits Intake Tool, and it's Reem Abdel Razik, Lauren Agresti, and Nigel Stacy. Take it away, guys. Bring it home.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Nigel Stacy. On behalf of my team, Reem and Lauren, we're here to present the Veterans Benefit Intake Tool, or VBIT. And VBIT was done in conjunction with the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center, CVLC, to combat the significant problem of veterans who need legal help. 3,600 veterans go to the VA specifically every year for legal help. And that's only a minor sliver of those who don't know that they need legal help, those who don't know how to get legal help. And so the CVLC has a clear mission to help those, particularly those recovering from homelessness or mental illness, overcome the significant legal barriers that you need for housing, healthcare, and income. Now, the problem that VBIT seeks to address, that CVLC asked us, was to maximize the efficiency, the effectiveness, the utility when CVLC is able to talk to a veteran. They also want to, even the step before that, give the veteran an ability to utilize CVLC services, how to help clinicians utilize their aid to veterans to include CVLC. And VBIT solves those problems with various solutions to provide an effective and efficient way to minimize the time and maximize the effectiveness of the communications between CVLC and the veteran. Also a way to provide flexibility and thoroughness in those screenings and to help veterans and clinicians utilize the services through information and through centralization. All the forms are in lots of different places. We bring them all together to make it clean, simple, and efficient. Now, there are three main users for VBIT. The first one is the CVLC screener. This is the primary user, a very sophisticated user who understands the issues involved. But we also incorporate the veteran, him or herself, and the clinician in order to create a team to maximize the effectiveness of the advocacy for the veteran. These are three very intricately interwoven users that maximize the effectiveness. And so now I'd like to talk about our design process. What we wanted is we wanted to create an app with warm colors, with fresh images to welcome the user in. And so we did that with the warm yellows, the warm blues, and with clear pictures that illustrate which path to go on. And so let's say we have a veteran, John Doe. And John Doe is a veteran who wants to utilize these services. And so the first question that comes up is whether he has a mental health clinician who can refer him. If he does, he puts in his clinician's name, Jane Doe, all the contact information, and then we get a report. The report is the same kind of welcome feel that we have, and it's a very simple design formula where we thank the veteran for utilizing our services, we summarize the information presented, we provide that information back for validation to ensure everything typed out was done correctly, and we provide the next steps. If there is no mental health clinician, we allow the veteran to input his or her email address, same report. We thank, same formula. We thank them, we summarize, and we provide next steps. In this case, we'll email the forms to you, bring them to your clinician, and then get back in contact with us. Now, what if you have Jane Doe? His clinician knows John Doe and wants John Doe to utilize CVLC services. The first one is whether she has the referral forms and whether she's submitted them. If it's a yes and no, same process, same formula. We thank them for helping our veterans. We summarize the steps that have been taken so far and the next steps. So in this case, she had not submitted the forms, and so you can either fax them to us or you can hand deliver them. If you have submitted these forms, thank you for bringing it to our attention. We thank them. The next steps will reach out to the veteran specifically. Now, the main user is going to be the CVLC screener, in this case, Nikki. And if there is a referral form, you provide the information, and then those get sent. Now, the main user is going to be Nikki, who is the screener. And the screener will reach out to the veteran directly once we obtain these forms. Now, CVLC wanted biographical information and then information specific to the legal issue. And so it's very clean, it's crisp. You have the contact information, service information, household information, income information, all on one screen to make it easy. Then we get to the specific legal issue. Say here, John has a debt issue. You have immediate validation that what you selected is the pathway that you're going, just to ensure everyone is on the same page. Then you select the specific issue that you want to pursue. So John, in this example, has a student loan issue, which a lot of us have a lot of student loan debt. And so once you select that, you have the issue-specific questions. But then also you have the text box at the bottom for flexibility. What CVLC stressed to us was that a lot of times John's story can't be encapsulated in simple yes or no questions, can't be encapsulated in simple fill in the blanks. And so here John isn't sure if he wants to go back to school. He's not sure if it's bang for the buck, if it's worth it. And so having this text box at the bottom will allow Nikki to take all of this down. And instead of asking her to try to remember it, instead of just ignoring it and asking to bring it up on the back end, this is a great way to memorialize the more color parts of the individual. Now, once everything's been finished, we utilize an aspect of Neota that doesn't get utilized very often, which is the change answer section. So if John talks about his biography and goes halfway through and jumps straight to his legal issue, Nikki won't have to stop the presentation. It'll continue the rapport between the individuals. And so the change answers, what it does is every single screen that you have seen is compiled into one very big screen. So that way you can go back and input any biographical information that's been lost. You can change the legal issue selection. You can change the issue-specific questions. And so this can be used if you do jump around or if you want to use it to validate everything on the back end. So just to be sure that you can maximize the efficiency and the effectiveness of the process, having everything on one screen. Now, what do we do next? We get the reports. The report can come in a Word document or PDF format. And what CVLC stressed to us is they wanted a clean, crisp. This is a sophisticated user that's going to go to a triage meeting where using this report and a lawyer is going to be assigned. And so here we have all the biographical information, and it's split up. So we have different sections. So if Nikki really needs to know about the service section, there it is, split apart from the biographical information and the income. And at the bottom here, we have the issue-specific section that clearly shows an underline that it's a student loan issue. All of the student loan summaries with all the specific questions. And like we talked about at the bottom, the flexible use of the text box. This way, Nikki, when she goes to her meeting for the triage, she's able to remember that he isn't even sure if he wants to go back to school. And so that will dictate and make a much more effective advocacy for the veteran. Thank you for your attention. We'll now take any questions.
I mean, it might be helpful, and sorry if you already laid this out, it might be helpful to hear what the screeners do now. I mean, this seems like a real efficiency, and it's nicely laid out. Is it now just they're writing these things down on scratch paper?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening, actually. We went through a mock sort of screener intake process with them before we even started building the app to see sort of how they do it and like the questions, how they sort of get asked. And basically what they have is they have a cheat sheet with like just a set of questions that they would ask for whatever issue comes up. And then they have a separate sort of Word document that they just scribble down whatever the answers are. So this hopefully is a cleaner, more precise process.
And I think that was interesting to us because I know personally in my volunteer experience in law school at various legal aid centers, that's a pretty common intake experience where someone's jotting things down on a piece of paper or in a Word document that's not very organized. And you have these people who are coming who are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and they don't know what their legal issue is, but they have all of the information that you want, and they have a very colorful and interesting story to tell. And I think that what we were trying to do is capture all the nuances of that story.
Yeah, I wonder, given the goal of simplifying this, how you in the app think about conveying the compelling nature of the story so that you do get that color in the end product that results after you've filled out all of this information.
Well, I think one way we tried to do that was with the additional text boxes at the bottom. So you have, the very standard questions that get asked. But at the end of each question, we have, what is the additional information? That way they can incorporate the very unique, every veteran obviously has a very different story to tell. So that text box will allow them to include that additional information that needs to be told.
Yeah, and one of the main benefits that we had is we had a very sophisticated user who is going to be using it. So the screener, because she is very knowledgeable about the specifics, we don't need to add a lot of unnecessary actions. We can just ensure that she has the tools at her disposal that she needs to best advocate for the veteran, and this has been the result that we've come up with.
Thank you for the great presentation. I have my usual question about the next step. So the end product here seems to be a report. Is the ultimate user here the lawyer that the vet is then going to be referred to so that the lawyer has in one place all of the information that he or she needs to know to begin to provide service?
I think ultimately it's the screener and the lawyer and everyone kind of at CVLC working together as a team. But yes, ultimately the report ends up in the hands of the lawyer. And I think that it was important to kind of capture all of the information that they needed without kind of giving them information that they don't need or that they want to come up with themselves, such as the actual kind of eligibility issues.
Because the process right now is that the screener, Nikki, sits around a big table with all the different CVLC lawyers and just goes through one by one. Okay, we have this veteran with this issue, and a lot of times that's either handwritten notes or a Word document that is very disjointed because the veteran could talk about, this is my background for 5 minutes, and then go for 30 minutes about a family custody issue, and then back into the biography. And so this is a great way for us to really improve the efficiency and effectiveness, because CVLC is great at what they do. We just are trying to make it more efficient for them to be able to do it better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the audience has the judges are going to deliberate, and I'm going to urge them to go to the other side of the hall and make a decision that I'm really glad I'm not eligible to make, which is to pick the top apps. You guys have a job, which is at the we have a social media prize. So if you go to irontechlawyer.com, the poll is now open, so you can vote for your favorite apps. And at the same time, or after you voted, then you're permitted to go to the buffet, get something to eat, get something to drink, and we'll be hearing from the judges soon. So, folks, our judges are done deliberating, highly efficient and methodical. So I'm going to ask everybody to come on back. The food is not going to go away. Don't worry. Don't worry. It'll still be there. Someone come on back and let's hear what the judges decided.
Actually, can I say something before? I guess I'm saying it anyway. I think this was dynamic in many respects because of your presentations, but also because the work that you've done is not theoretical. It's work that will benefit a lot of people who are in need of that benefit. So in addition to the prizes we hand out, I just wanted to personally thank you for the time, effort, and thoughtfulness that went into all of this work. So thanks.
I second that. We were blown away by these presentations. All of you had to do 3 things in the course of this semester. You had to immerse yourselves in the problems of a particular user community. You had to learn to put yourself in their shoes, and you all did that remarkably. You're very perceptive, and you're quick studies, and that skill will stand you in good stead no matter what you do with your law degree. Second, you had to learn to create an app. I wouldn't have signed up for this course. I would have been too scared to. You put yourselves out there to do that, and you did it beautifully. And third, you had to learn a substantive area of law to be able to design an app that was going to deal with the problem that you had. Those 3 things together, to have done that in the course of a single semester is really extraordinary. So thank you all, and congratulations to all of you. We have 3 apps that we'd like to recognize, one with an honorable mention, one with best design, and one with best overall. Our award for our honorable mention goes to the app for
I have to apologize since we didn't know about honorable mentions. We don't have a prize, but congratulations. But we will get one. We will get one. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So now,
Oh, okay, photo.
Judges, photo.
Congratulations. Not in front of the podium, or you're fine?
We particularly wanted to recognize the beauty of your presentation. That was a very, very clear, very well done presentation, and it was a very ambitious app. It's hard to design an app to write a brief, but you really did a great job of that, and in particular, your recognition of the difficulty of just perfecting an appeal, just being able to get to the point where you can have your case heard is so important, and what you did was very practical there, so congratulations. Our award for Best Design goes to New Beginnings, the juvenile records expungement application.
Yes, exactly.
Congratulations. Congrats. In case you're wondering about the prizes, they are, in fact, one of the oldest and most important technologies around. They're books.
Drum roll, please.
Just a comment on,
Yes.
On your design. It was a very clean design, and it was very carefully tailored to the user communities that you're trying to serve. Really well done. And our overall award goes to iFeel.
I'm going to sneak in here too. Wait, let me sneak in on this side. I gather that we had how many votes in the end? Some 700? 900, almost 1,000 people voted. So we're going to let the people speak. And the winner is Navigator's Compass. Woo! Come on up, Navigator's Compass. Good, nice job. They have 900 friends.
That's hilarious. Yeah, yeah.
Come and take a picture with the judges too.
We're representing 900
Thank you, everybody. Everyone stay, eat, drink, and be merry and celebrate. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yes. Good job.